Welcome back to Maatos-Maasei, sharing a story for this week's Parshas Maatos-Maasei. We're going to focus on Maasei. Ela Maasei b'nei Yisrael. Am Yisrael travels. And the Sfarim say that every individual Jew goes through 42 journeys similar to the ones that are listed in Parshas Maasei. Jewish history is full of stories that tell us how the Torah moved from place to place where it had to, often through the journeys of people, oftentimes journeys that they didn't wish to take. This week we're going to focus on a great Talmud Chacham named Rav Yaakov Yisrael Zuber Zatzal. He was a student of the Lubavitch Yeshiva, actually back in Lubavitch, and when it came time for him to go out and spread Torah, he was sent to the Caucasus Mountains, where there were Jews who really needed education, needed a rabbi. They were called the Bar Yidden, the mountain Jews. There he learned the language, the Georgian language, to communicate, and he took care of them in every way. He was the shochet, he was the moel, he was the rav, he was the teacher, everything that was needed, and he became proficient in every aspect of this. He was beloved there and stayed for quite a while, but eventually the situation in Russia got too difficult, and he went over to Riga in Latvia for a few reasons. Number one, his Rebbe, the Rayatz, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, was also in Riga at the time, and Riga was away from, at that point, from the influence of the communists, and he was waiting to get a visa to go to the United States. He had siblings in the United States, and suddenly, 1929, the stock market crashed. He was told not to come. So he was in a dilemma. He didn't know what to do, where to go. So across the Baltic Sea was the community of Stockholm in Sweden. They were looking for a rabbi, and they sent a group to Riga to look for a rabbi. So he had all of the skills that they wanted. He was already prepared and practiced, so to speak, in the Caucasus Mountains, and he came and became a rabbi in Sweden. Again, his plan in Sweden was just to stay for a few years until the situation got better in America, and he could go over. However, before he could do that, World War II broke out. And suddenly, as busy as he was in Sweden beforehand, he became extremely busy. He became involved in helping refugees who made their way out to Sweden, which was a neutral country. And he helped them, and he fed them, and he taught them. He became involved as channeling information and money from other countries to the yeshiva students who ended up in Shanghai, from the Mir Yeshiva, the Chabad Yeshiva, Chachmei Lublin, and other yeshivas, and he was very busy in helping them. And then, as the war ended, so Sweden became a haven for so many refugees, and many of those refugees were women who had heard that their husbands had died, but they were in a state of igun. They were agunas. They couldn't yet get married until a Beis Din could really verify and paskin that that was so. And he worked on this day and night, listening to the stories, hearing witnesses. His daughter said that his beard changed color from black to gray from the pain of hearing all of those different stories. Eventually, it became time, after I believe at least 20 years in Sweden, where he built up the community, which I'll mention still exists today. I had the privilege of spending Shavuos there a couple of years ago with the current Rav, my good friend Rav Matthias Amster, the Adas Yisrael Shul, the same one that Rabbi Zuber did. I met an old man who proudly told me that Rabbi Zuber was his moel. And then he was to come to America. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rayatz, had come to New York and asked Rabbi Zuber to come to be the Rosh Yeshiva of the Lubavitch Yeshiva in New York. He got the visa papers and went to America, but suddenly a Lubavitch Rosh Yeshiva from Otvotsk, who was presumed to have died in the war, suddenly reappeared. Rabbi Zuber, in a very noble gesture, stepped aside so that he could take the head of the Lubavitch Yeshiva in New York, and instead he was sent to become the Rav of the Nusach Harishul in Boston, Massachusetts. Unfortunately, soon after he moved to Boston, a couple of years in, he was murdered in an anti-Semitic attack. However, even though that is a sad, so to speak, last stage of the journey, I have a very personal connection to that piece of the journey that took him to Boston. His son, Rav Shalom Zuber, was a pillar of the community whom I remember. I used to work for him during my summer vacations. His sons, Reb Shia and Reb Izzy, Yaakov Yisrael Zuber, also pillars of the community. Rav Yeshia is a member of the Beis Din in Boston, has taught Torah to all and sundry, including me. I had the schus of learning from him and learning much from him. And the influence that he brought to Boston goes on to this very day. So it's an important lesson. We saw some very significant journeys that he took. We saw journeys that he wasn't able to take when he wanted to. We saw even that last journey that seemed to have ended up so briefly and perhaps not with the huge sense of accomplishment as in some of his other stations did accomplish and still accomplishing. And the fact that I'm sitting here in Eretz Yisrael telling you a story is in some ways part of the legacy of Rav Yaakov Yisrael Zuber. Wishing everyone a wonderful Shabbos. Kol Tov.